Welcome back to the Comp Closet podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we are joined by a beautiful vet nurse and a new FMG Bikini Athletic Pro. Caitlin Fisher, welcome.
Thank you so much. Really excited to be on today.
No worries. I'm so excited to chat to you. And as you know, I have so many questions for you. But let's start at the beginning of your journey. Like, what got you into bodybuilding in the first place?
Yeah, so I think similarly to most girls, late teens sort of made that transition into the gym for the first time. I was always very active as a kid, a dancer since I was, tiny. So making that transition late high school, started to sort of lift weights. It did start with a lot of the bikini programs. Rachel Dillon, she was a classic back in those days. I did start off with a lot of those, and actually that was really great for me just to kind of get into some sort of routine and learn the basics. Whatever I was doing was probably wrong, but it was a start. And then I think my first proper build program I did was actually Tammy Hembrow's Build a Booty back in 2015 or something. And it was only 8 weeks, but that was, I think, the moment where I was like, oh my gosh, like this is really cool. Like pushing weights and lifting those heavy compound movements for sort of the first time, and obviously learning it all at the same time it really was that moment where I was like, oh, like this is cool. Like chasing this progress feels really good. And then from there, I fell in love with it. The progress of progressive overload and learning new sort of movements, and obviously seeing that change in your physique was really, really exciting. And it was just the ability to be able to be like, okay, I'm not happy about this in my body, but I can change it, and I can change it in a healthy way that's good for me. So it wasn't a perfect start, and there was definitely questionable, methods in the early days, but I fell in love with it quite quickly, and it was quite it was a really positive sort of transition into the gym for me.
I love that. That's such a good start. And I love that you fell in love with the process as well of actually,
Mm,
building muscle and changing your body in a really healthy and positive way.
yeah.
Did you kind of know that you would end up competing, or like how did that decision making process go?
So I am, for those who know me personally, I'm a very competitive person, and I've always loved that edge about me. So I've competed since I was little through dance, and then I was a pole dancer as well. So I competed in that for years. And initially, like it took a few years in the gym, just training and whatnot, but seeing the online influence again with, Rachel Dillon, Lauren Simpson, all of those girls back in the day, that did definitely spark my interest of like you can actually compete in this. It wasn't something that I had really thought about that much. So late teens, I was like, one day I could potentially do this, add this to my list of things that I could do. And but for me, it wasn't until I was very aware that I wanted to wait until I was at a place, mentally, and my relationship with food. I wanted to make sure that that was really secure and healthy, because I was aware that it was a very extreme sport, and jumping into it for me back then wouldn't have probably been the best. And it was just a matter of time for me. So that underlying feeling was always there, and it just hit that point when I was in my early 20s where I was like, you know what? Like, this is the right time. Let's do it. And then I got my coach, who I've had to this day, and it's haven't stopped since.
Yeah, so you made the decision that like now's the time. And then what were the next steps? You obviously got a coach. Is there anything else that you
Yeah.
did, or did you pretty much just do what they said?
Yeah. So my habits were pretty much, I had built really good habits over the years of training myself. And I had had some like online coaches in the meantime, and had done a lot of programs, which definitely helped sort of lock in those habits that you do need going into a prep, and even going into working with a comp prep coach. So I teamed up with Jason. I had a lot of the habits already there. I had been tracking. I had been tracking my weights. I had been following programs, all still, living a relatively free life. And so then that transition into that pre-prep sort of phase was quite easy for me. And having, a coach that really clearly outlined the expectations, and having that support there whilst I was kind of getting into the swing of things. So by the time my prep for my first show came around, I felt really confident in, myself, and that I could tick all the boxes and go through the process and take it as it comes.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you remember most from your first time on stage, your first show?
It was such a good time. I that is an experience I will never forget. Main thing was it was just I was so overwhelmingly proud and I felt so confident on stage that day, even though I was like a baby and I was tiny and just like woohoo. I was so confident stepping out for that first time, and when they called my name forward, I just felt so good in myself. And as a performer, the stage is where I love to be. So having not been on stage in a long time, that just felt incredible to me. And I remember I remember very clearly like the screams and the cheers from my friends and my coach and all the support in the crowd. Like that was such an amazing feeling, sort of having that recognition of all that work that you've put in over the past, 20 plus weeks being recognized in that moment on stage. And I was like, you know what, all the doubts and the nerves had just gone like poof. And I was so happy to be up there.
Yes, incredible. And then is there anything that you did in that first prep that you wouldn't do now?
I feel like everyone has a list, definitely a learning experience. But I think the worst thing I did was I started running for whatever reason. I think I justified it in myself, but how you get those doubts of, oh, am I going to be lean enough? Am I working hard enough? And to me, I was like, what's the hardest thing I could do to my body right now? And I thought, let's start running. So that was against my coach's advice. So I might be admitting this for the first time to him. Sorry. But I started running on the treadmill and it was just not the thing to do. It's too intense for your body, takes too much to recover from. Um, I'm a really bad runner, so it just put a lot of strain on my back. So I definitely wouldn't recommend that to anybody. Keep
Yeah.
running for maybe outside of prep.
Do you have any advice for someone who does feel like they need to do more than what their coach is programming for them?
Yeah, definitely. I think first of all, recognize and acknowledge the feeling that, you're feeling anxious or you're nervous and you're probably comparing yourself a lot to, the competition out there, and that's very normal in a sort of situation like this. Acknowledge it first, but then make sure that you're honest with your coach. That's what they're there for, and they're there to help you. And they can't do that if they don't know what's going on in your head and what you might be doing, which you might also be justifying, but things that you might be doing that's actually sabotaging your own progress. So definitely be honest with yourself, acknowledge the feeling, and then speak to your coach is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, that communication with your coach is key, especially like during your
Yeah.
first preps, because you don't know what to expect or how fast your body should be changing, and you don't really have
Yeah.
any like benchmark for, previous preps or what you're going to look like when you get on stage. So I think there is a lot of doubt and anxiety, especially in your first prep, because you've never, you've likely never gotten stage lean before, so you don't know what the process is like or whether you're actually going to get there. And I think it is definitely a scary time, but yeah, it definitely comes down to that communication with your coach, right?
Absolutely. And even for girls going into their second show, no prep's the same. And just because you've done one show, it doesn't mean the next one's going to be easier. In a lot of cases, it's harder. Like for me, it was harder, a completely different package that I was going for. And sometimes you see it in girls, they might have this expectation that they're going to go into their second prep and it's going to progress the same, which might be really quick, or things might be easy. And then when they're not, and that doesn't meet their expectations, it can be really hard mentally to adjust to. So just being really open to the fact that every prep is a completely different experience. And you just have to come in with a clean slate of expectations and just know that you rely on your habits and the relationship with your coach and the support that you've got around you to get through however hard the next one might be.
Yes, that's so true. Was there anything that kind of impacted your last prep that you think made it harder, or was it just your body not responding in the same way?
Well, the main thing for the prep just gone for me was it was a completely new category. So, bikini athletic compared to bikini, the conditioning that we were going for was insane. Like it's so conditioned, which is really cool to strive for. But prep wise, all the things involved with it, it was I just roll with it, and I know like I can count on myself to get the hard stuff done. But there were a lot of external factors, life wise, life doesn't stop because prep is prepping. So I had to kind of balance a lot of emotional stress and strains externally and just kind of stay focused and in my lane and just take it day by day, task by task. So that was probably the hardest thing this prep challenge wise comparatively to my last prep, which was actually quite breezy.
Yeah, and then how did it feel in the Gold Coast to get your placing?
Oh my gosh, it was a whole whirlwind of emotions. I always knew, like, once I finished that Gold Coast show, like, every emotion was just going to hit me. I had been very, like, controlled, no breakdowns, nothing throughout my whole prep. And I was like, it's going to hit me. So, yeah, hearing my name called for second, I was overwhelmed. I was excited. I was mostly proud of myself because I had known how much had gone into not just the prep, but the whole off season. And I was also a little bit disappointed, which I think is okay to say. Like everyone, I was going for that, first place, and I had worked my ass off just like everyone does. And I was just a little bit disappointed in myself because I felt like I could have brought a little bit of a better package, particularly to the morning show. But it's just a passing feeling. Again, acknowledge it. It passed, and I just sat with that, the the feeling of being so proud of myself, and obviously having all the support from everyone definitely outweighed any sort of negative feelings that crept in. It was a lot. It was a lot to process.
Yeah, and then was it the plan to back it up with the Dallas show, or like when did you make that decision?
Definitely not the plan. No, very spontaneous. So if I had sort of made a plan in my head about future shows if I didn't, win the pro card, but it definitely wasn't for Dallas. We actually came out with that idea when we were celebrating on the Sunday after dinner, after a day of food and some drinks. And I was like, okay, like we're doing this. Spoke to my coach first thing the next morning, and we had new protocols and we were locked in. And it was a push for the next 2 weeks. But I'm so glad that I went ahead with it.
Yeah, so was it only 2 weeks between the shows?
Yeah, so 1 week and then technically straight into the next peak week. So for me, it was conditioning that I had to drive because obviously you're not going to grow in that 2 weeks. And I had to really push that conditioning through my legs, particularly through my quads and my hamstrings. And I dieted that whole way through peak week and worked as well. So I was pushing until I pushed until the Saturday of show where I got my carb up. It was crazy.
That's crazy. How did you go with the travel and dieting, that hard coming into the show?
It was tough. Obviously, I was at my most depleted I'd ever been, and managing the stress of working a busy week as well, that whole peak week, and then flying after work the day before show was a lot, and it was a big risk. So I I just sort of isolated myself to my own little bubble, and I blocked out external noise. So I just, did my things, went to work, came home. I had a lot of help from people really close to me, just sort of picking up the mess behind me and making sure I had all of my ducks in order to get to the US. And not get turned around or not get stuck anywhere or anything like that. Remember to bring my bikini and everything. So it was a really big push, but we made it work in the end somehow.
Wow, so you flew in the day before the show.
I did. Very risky. I would not recommend that to anyone. My coach was stressed, but he hit it very well. But yeah, we just manipulated my peak week protocols to sort of reflect the fact that I was doing a 27-hour commute, landing on the Friday, competing on the Saturday. Hence the sort of dieting and depleting the whole way through. And I landed on the Friday, and we just worked really hard to get the fluid moving and drop. I had 1.5 kilos to lose just from that flight, which we achieved it, which was really cool to see that process. And it's like you just had to, for me, I just had to like keep myself as calm as possible because the stress wasn't going to help, and listen to my coach and just do the things, put my legs up. And yeah, by the time we got to show day, I had dropped even lower than what I did pre-flight. So that was really cool to see that all come together.
Wow, what were some of the protocols that you had to do after the flight and during the flight as well?
Yeah, so during the flight, I had to keep my water and my salt exactly the same as I had been doing that entire peak week. So any fluctuations to that with flying could really drastically affect my fluid retention. So I was keeping a really close eye on my fluid and my water. Obviously, no aeroplane food or anything like that. So I had all of my meals prepped and timed, and then just managing I planned out my sleep for the flight. So by the time I landed in the US, hopefully I skipped the jet lag, which I did. That worked really well. And then the day on the Friday, it was just about getting some light movement in, a light pump up session because I was really flat in the morning, and then keeping food quite sort of reserved that day, and then having a little bit of a play with some more carbs later in that evening before registration. And that was about it, really. Oh, and a good nap in the middle part of the day.
It's so cool, like what you can do with your body and how much you can manipulate things through small changes like that. Like
Mm,
it's pretty incredible, I think. And our coaches do an amazing job as well, figuring out what we need
yeah.
to do too. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. What was show day like for you in Dallas?
It was amazing. Completely different crowd of people, different atmosphere, the same vibe as a whole, but they were such beautiful people. Very, very grateful for the sort of international support. There were a lot of Aussie athletes that came over for that show in particular, and they just welcomed us with open arms. And it was the nerves, they were all gone. Everyone was having a beautiful time. The venue was incredible. The backstage area was huge. So we had beautiful mirrors. We had lots of space to just lay down and chill out. And the music was amazing. Like the music and the playlist, the little DJ that they had for the stage was like, he was so good. So stepping out onto stage, they were just, the vibes were really high, and there was sort of no room to get in your head or anything because everyone was just hyping everyone up. It was a really, really incredible experience.
Love that. And then what was going through your head when they called your name as a pro?
Without using any language, it was like I did it. Like I did that. And that's when the tears just went and it all came out. And it was that moment that I had to just pinch myself and be like, wow, you have been working for this goal in particular ever since you signed up, back in 2022. I started this journey, and it was just that moment of like, it was worth it and you've done it. So it was, yeah, I was overwhelmingly happy.
The best feeling.
The best feeling ever.
Yeah. And you made some really incredible improvements between seasons. For anyone that follows you, they will know, like, from your before and after photos, how much progress you made between your last show and then these two shows that you did. So, what was your approach to building size this time around?
Yeah, so this is so important. And the main thing for me, and a lot of girls I'm sure will understand, once you step off your first show experience, you're really excited to get up there again. And what I needed was time, and I needed lots of time to spend in a surplus, putting on weight slowly, training really, really hard, and just keeping consistent with all of the non-negotiables and those protocols that are required to put on muscle. It's no easy task, and it's a task that does require patience, and it requires that consistency and really conscious consistency. So time was the main thing. I had 2 years between my shows, and then your training intensity. I trained like a crazy person. I really pushed myself in every session. And what helped was having that really strong driver for my next show is like, I want to come back unrecognizable. I've said, like, I feel like my version now ate the previous version of myself. And it was just using that drive to really push me in every session to make sure that I was training with the intensity required to grow. So time, training intensity was at an all-time high, obviously fueling your body. So I was eating a lot, and that took time to build up, obviously. But by the end, I was like, oh my God, I've never eaten this much food before. And then keeping a coach obviously is really important. So I had my weekly check-ins each week throughout that whole process. Had a session with my coach once a week, which was really good at keeping me accountable for my training intensity, making sure that, okay, does my training outside of my sessions with him match? And it was a good reality check at times to be like, oh no, like you can train harder, off you go. So yeah, it's a bit of a patience game, but it's definitely worth it if you can stick to it for a good, couple of years is often what's needed.
And what advice do you have for girls who want to grow and build muscle, but they're afraid to lose that lean look?
We all struggle with it. I feel like it's a process that does take time to come to terms with, but shifting the goalpost mentally. So yes, in order to build muscle, you have to come to terms with the fact that you have to soften up and you have to allow yourself and your body to, put on weight slowly. And that does mean letting go of those lines that we might have valued too highly in the past for so long of our early years. And then shifting the goalpost to your performance. So how good does it feel to train with energy? How good does it feel to progress each week and, add that extra plate where you've never added that extra plate before, and really focusing on how good that feels, because physically it is a lot harder to see the muscle and the shape that you're building when you are carrying, the layers of body fat. So for me personally, I had to really focus on, okay, training, like, how's that going? What does that look like? Looking at my numbers, wow, okay, I'm really progressing here. And then over time, as I kept sort of focusing myself back to that, I did start to let go of, the sort of connection with having the lines on my stomach or a really tight waistline, because by the end of my build there was none of that. I was uncomfortable and it was hard, but I had never trained and hit those PBs ever before. So, you have to just learn to let go sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's pretty cool when you start hitting those PBs and feeling that strength in the gym. And even though you can't see necessarily the physical progress because it is slow in a build and sometimes it
Mhm.
feels like you're going backwards, it is so, so worth it for that energy in the gym. Like,
Yeah,
it's just the best feeling. And I think when you're in a build, you almost forget about that. And then you go back into a prep again and you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I felt like I did in my build.
I know. It's so funny, and I always say, like, you always want what you can't have, and when you're in a deficit and you're in the depths of prep, you're just thinking like, I just want body fat, like I just need some body fat on me and I want the energy. And then as soon as you're, particularly even in a reverse and the body fat's coming back on, you're like, oh no, like I want this now. And it's just, again, acknowledge it, but you just have to learn how to, shift your mindset to new goals and just appreciate the process as it is, I feel.
Yeah, so true. I couldn't have said that better. What would be the hardest part of prep for you personally?
Hardest for me, I don't think it's necessarily the actual tasks of prep, but I know a lot of other girls do, shift work. And as a vet nurse, it was work that was the hardest thing. Again, life doesn't stop for prep. So being on my feet all day, working such long hours and doing all of my training and my cardio and my steps around work was really, really hard. So managing that brain fog, the fatigue, not being able to like lift up my arm or wrestle a dog. I was like, gosh, this is just, I'm useless. So that was really, really hard, especially in the back end of prep when I had, cracked that level of leanness that I had never been before. My body was like, okay, wow, you're really struggling now. So managing work was definitely the hardest thing for me, but just making those little changes to my schedule and just tweaking things where needed to make my days a little bit easier definitely helped. But yeah, shift work is no joke in prep, so lots of respect to the girls, and especially nurses that do overnight shifts. I don't know how you do it. It's crazy. It's very tough.
Yeah, it blows my mind anyone doing shift work or even just having differences in hours because,
Yeah.
having that routine on prep and that consistent times where you can kind of do things when you have energy makes so much of a difference. So yeah, massive
Mm.
respect as well to anyone doing shift work. Was there ever a point during prep or at any phase of your fitness journey that you just wanted to give up?
Um, in prep, no. I am definitely the type of person that, like personality wise, once I set my mind to a goal, and as being a competitive person anyway, once the goal is set, there's not really anything stopping me, and I just kind of like lock in. And I'm very good at blocking out external sort of distractions and factors and the emotions and whatnot. But probably the point where I wanted to give up was actually in the build. Like we said, it's really challenging mentally in a different way, watching your body get bigger and bigger and bigger. And, clothes just don't fit right. And you generally feel a little bit more sluggish. But then you have to keep, fueling your body and eating the food and sort of showing up even when you feel uncomfortable. So was I going to give up? No, but there was a lot more temptation to go to my coach and be like, okay, can we do a mini cut, or can we do a little tidy up here and there, because I feel uncomfortable. Even though I'm still focused and doing the stuff, like I just don't feel my most confident self. So probably the build is where it's actually really tough to keep going.
Yeah, I could agree with that for sure. Wanting to jump out of the build phase and just tidy up a little bit, or
Yeah,
kind of not being able to have that long term vision, which is so hard because sometimes it feels like you're in the build for the longest time, especially if it's, a
yeah,
year or two of building.
yeah,
It can be a lot. So, yeah, I can
yeah.
relate to that for sure. And then talking about stage presence and posing, because your posing and stage presence is absolutely insane.
Oh, thank you.
What is one thing that most competitors overlook when it comes to stage presence?
That is a great question. Because yeah, your stage presence it makes the biggest difference to whether the eyes dart to the girl next to you or if they keep darting back to you. I find both from watching shows and working with my clients is that your how you use your energy and the presence of your energy is such a massive thing, and it's often missed. And it's something that does take time to learn. Your body is like this little vessel of energy, and every single movement in your posing should be utilizing that energy, and it should have both intention and purpose and direction. So it is something that takes time to learn, and it helps having someone guide you and guide that out of you. But that is what I find makes the biggest difference, which it's hard to kind of, when you're looking at a lineup of girls, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is about that performer that you can't, take your eyes off them. And it often does come down to their energy and their purpose and intent with every single, flick of the hand, every single like carve of the elbow, how they like step through the foot. It's all energy. And it's hard to explain, and it does take a lot of like sort of pulling and grabbing and tapping and poking of people to kind of like communicate that. Yeah, definitely tapping into your energy and how you can, project that out through your posing makes a massive difference.
Yeah, and it's definitely so important too. Like, especially in the amateur lineups, there's so many girls on stage.
Mm,
Like, you need that energy and that presence to be noticed. Like, obviously, it's important that your physique is amazing as well and fits the judging criteria and everything, but you need to be noticed as well, and you need the judges to actually look at you. It's
absolutely.
so important.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. It's so competitive these days, and it comes down to those little one percenters that if you can nail those extra, five little things on top of like your really strong technique, you've got an incredible physique that you've worked really hard for. Those extra little one percenters over the top of that they're the things that make you, the standout of the day, which we're all going for.
Yes, 100%. And do you pose in your off season or in a growth phase as well?
I do, yeah. It's hard. That's another thing that is very, very challenging to do. My posing in my off season, in all honesty, it's definitely not as regimented or consistent as it is leading into a prep. But I do dust the heels out and get myself in front of the mirror at the gym and practice, obviously, the fundamentals technique wise to make sure that, stays in my body, that the muscle memory is still there. But it's definitely a lower frequency. So I try to pose once a week. Sometimes it's once every 2 weeks in my off season because I am quite comfortable in my posing. Everybody's a bit different. So you do have to sort of be realistic with how confident you feel in your posing. What was your feedback from your last show? Are you just starting out? And then adapt your posing frequency to sort of match where you're at and where you want to get to.
Yeah, perfect. And then what's next for you? Like any pro debut plans?
Absolutely. I am not done yet. So I am definitely set on Worlds next year. That is the long-term goal, is to go for that world crown. There's a lot to do in the meantime, which is super exciting. So whether or not my debut show is this year or next year is not 100% confirmed, so that's a secret for the moment. But you will definitely see me on the world stage next year. I do have my feedback from both shows now, so we're just putting into sort of plan time-wise and all where we go with my debut show.
That is so exciting. Do you mind sharing some of your feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my Gold Coast feedback, where I placed second, was just my conditioning in my legs, pretty much, in terms of improvements. So, more conditioning through my glutes and hamstrings, particularly, a little bit more through my quads, my conditioning through my upper body and core and everything was fine. And then a little bit more uh, size, like all of us, a little bit more size to my glutes and hamstrings. And then my Dallas feedback was conditioning was good, a little bit more size to my hamstrings. So really good feedback. They loved my posing and my presence, which was always nice to get feedback on. So another build phase is what that means, which I can do.
Amazing. And only small adjustments as well,
Yeah.
albeit it takes time, as we know. But
Yeah.
it's so exciting that, your conditioning and posing and stage presence and like most of your physique, apart from the little bits that you need to bring up, was on point. So that's really, really exciting.
Super exciting, and all thanks to the 2 years that I took to really push to grow those areas. So well done, past Caitlin.
Absolutely. And a few fun questions as well. If you weren't bodybuilding, what sport or hobby do you think you would do instead?
I feel like I'd probably still be pole dancing. I loved it. It's such an incredible sport, very challenging in its own ways. So I'd probably still be pole dancing if my body could hold up and I wasn't injured or anything like that. So a sport that I'll always love, and I would do it at the same time if I could, but it's too much on the body to try do everything. But yeah, I'd go back to pole dancing.
I love that. And then what's your go-to meal post-show?
Oh, the all important question. Always a burger, a good burger with chips. I've got such a salty, savory tooth. So, yeah, a fried chicken burger with a big amount of chips. It's got to be like this
Um,
big.
yeah, a chicken burger is so good, especially
You can't
post-show.
beat it. Post show, nothing hits harder than that post show meal.
Yeah, I love it. And lastly, what is something that people might be surprised to learn about you?
This is a good question. I feel like I'm pretty simple, but probably, which I've already spoken about, is that the fact that I was a pole dancer. I was a semi professional pole dancer through my competitive years with that, which was awesome. So, yeah, I was an instructor. I taught women for quite a few years, I think 3 years, which was amazing. And yeah, I had my little semi professional status there, which I then made that transition into bodybuilding, and now I've got my pro bodybuilding status, which is really cool.
Wow, yeah, you're definitely one of those people that like 100% goes all in on what you're doing to, get to the
Yeah,
top of it. So I love that. You're definitely going to get that world crown one day, and I'm so excited
one
to
day.
follow the rest of your journey. Where can people find you online if they want to follow you?
I'm mainly on Instagram, so what's my name? It's Caitlin Fisher underscore Caitlin. Yeah, I post all my stuff there. That's where you can find me.
Perfect. I'll link that down below so that people can find you as well. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story and your tips and advice as well. I think anyone listening to this will find it super valuable.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always good to get up and share your story, and hopefully bits and pieces in there help others either new or already seasoned in their journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for listening to this as well. If you could give the show a rating on whatever platform you're listening to it on, and also share it to your stories and let us know what you're doing while you're listening. Tag Caitlin and myself and the Comp Closet. We'd love to see it. Thank you so much.